All right, welcome again, everyone, to How to Write an Email to Faculty to Convey Your Curiosity and Motivation to Get a Research Position. My name is Sarah Stinson. I'm a TA and Program Coordinator at the Undergraduate Research Center on campus, and I'm also an ecology PhD candidate in the ecology grad group. And we probably will have a lot of time at the end for answering your questions. Excuse me. This is like the third presentation that I've given today for various things, so I may lose my voice. So we're going to have plenty of time at the end, but also feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go through. And I have one of the amazing URC staff, Lolita, here to help keep an eye on the chat too. So if I don't see your question right away, we'll get to the questions at the end. Okay, so hopefully you are already familiar with the URC, at least a little bit, because you are here and you found the Zoom link. So congratulations, step one is accomplished. The URC is an amazing resource for students on campus. Our mission is to help you connect with research opportunities and really help you get the most out of your experience at UC Davis. UC Davis is an R1 institution. There's a ton of research in all disciplines, all majors going on campus. And students just like yourselves are conducting really amazing work, publishing in leading journals, presenting at conferences, gaining all those technical skills that you will need for your, excuse me, for your future academic and professional careers. So no matter what type of research you want to do, there's a lot of overlap with how to get started in that process. So check out this, obviously you're checking this one out, but check out the other events for Research Week, because there's a lot of other opportunities to learn some great tips and tricks for that process. So examples are how to give a presentation, applying for awards. And then also we will have some continuing workshops in the Discovery Cafe series that will be happening after this week as well throughout the quarter. So we'll have those posted on our website. So keep an eye out for that. And you can also check us out on social media to stay informed about those upcoming events. Oops, let's do that. Here we go. So a question that I get a lot in advising appointments with students is, when should I start research? When should I start trying to find a research opportunity in my undergrad career? And that's going to depend on your personal experience, definitely. You do not have to start day one of fall quarter of freshman year to get the most out of your experience. A lot of students start later. Transfer students start later. I was a transfer student as an undergrad at UC Davis, and I had 3 different research experiences while I was an undergrad, and they were extremely helpful. And one was a paid position. So I started as a volunteer, and then I found a different position that was paid. So keep in mind, you can get experience, but you can also get money, or you could get unit credit if you need unit credit as well. So there are different options for that. So you can also check out courses such as the Cures course, which gives you kind of a snapshot of research. And there's a link here in the slide. I can also put that in the chat later if people are interested. But that's a great opportunity for getting a sense of what types of research can be conducted on campus. So generally, there are some main steps for finding a research position. And there was another event yesterday that went over these in more detail, but here's the summary of that. So you don't have to listen to the hour-long one. You can just look at this one slide if you want, or you can check out that other event because it'll be posted on our website. So first, you want to make a list of all the interests that you have, and you're here, you're learning new things in classes every day. You probably don't yet have a solid idea of exactly what you want as your career goal. Maybe you have some idea, maybe you have no idea. That's okay too. But keep your mind open when you're taking these classes. Pay attention to the sorts of topics that the professors are presenting that pique your interest. So when you really start to pay attention in class and you realize, wow, that sounds so fascinating, I'm really glad I'm learning this. I had no idea that that was something I could research. I had no idea that that was even a career opportunity for me. Pay attention to that because you're going to discover those, and then that'll help guide you in your path towards figuring out where you want to go when you graduate or what types of research you want to get involved in while you're still an undergrad here at Davis. Um, Conference abstracts are great sources for kind of looking at the broad spectrum of the types of research that are currently being done. I highly recommend that you check out the undergraduate research conferences abstracts, which are on our website. Again, we can put the link in the chat if people are interested. So this is an entire abstract book of just undergraduate research at UC Davis. So these are your peers who are already engaged in research, and these are people who you might even be able to reach out to directly to ask about their research experiences. A main way that students find faculty mentorship and lab or whatever type of research you're interested in is through departmental websites. So every department on campus has a website with a list of the faculty who are active in their department. So I highly recommend that you also go through and look at not just your department, but any department that might have research that you're interested in. So as an undergrad here, you don't have to just do research in your own department. You could go anywhere, do any research on campus. There are a lot of interdisciplinary opportunities. So don't limit yourself to that. So keep that in mind. But you may want to start in your home department. You can also check out, faculty have their own websites often. So you can go to their website, learn about their research interests. Sometimes they'll list papers there, or you can also go to places like Google Scholar, type in their name, read their most recent paper. That's an excellent idea. Even if you don't understand it all, because maybe you haven't learned all the technical terminology that they're using yet, it's still a great way to get started. And you can at least just read the abstract, get a general sense of what their research is all about. I highlighted or put in bold point 3, which is talk to TAs and grad students, peer advisors, and undergraduate researchers, because I feel like this is an underutilized resource here. If you're interested in grad school, definitely talk to grad students here on campus. They're happy to tell you all about what they're doing. And we have an amazing program through the URC that are undergraduate research ambassadors. So they can also be great resources for you to get a sense of what it's like to be an undergrad doing research on campus. So definitely check out the URAs, the undergraduate research ambassadors, which are, I think there's some info on our website about that as well. But what we're going to talk about right now is contacting professors directly. So so you've made a list, you figured out what your interests are, you found a faculty person on the departmental website who's doing the super cool research that you're interested in. You went total fangirl or boy or any other pronoun on them because you love their research, and you are now ready to reach out and make first contact with them. So what do? It's often an intimidating step because this is maybe your first interaction with that person, and you want to make a good impression and you want to stand out and you want your resume or your email to really be the one that they pick for whatever position you're interested in. So we already went over this a little bit. I guess this is kind of repetitive, but send that email. All right, so here's an example. Let's just take a look at this together. There's a couple of things that you might notice right away, even before reading it. I'll read it out loud in case people need that. Dear Dr. Jessica, I am a senior biology student and looking for research. Do you still have available position in your lab? I am looking forward to hear from you. Thanks. Couple of things maybe stand out right away and maybe not. So first, you're going to notice it's super short, right? This is 3 sentences long and it's pretty impersonal. So I could probably have copied and pasted this and sent this to 100 other faculty on campus because it's pretty vague. So it doesn't say anything about what Dr. Jessica does. It doesn't say anything about why you're interested in working with Dr. Jessica or the lab or the type of work that they do in their lab. And it's really vague overall. So another thing is that you always want to use the proper title for that person. So let's say it's somebody that you've already met. Let's say you're taking a course from this professor. Even if they introduce themselves as Bob in the lecture, like call me Bob, I would still opt to call them Dr. Bob's last name, whatever Bob's last name is, in that email, because it's a professional correspondence and it's just showing them that you're respecting their position, respecting their title. So in general, at least for the very first introduction, I would default on the side of being more formal. So I would always use the title. Doctor is appropriate. You could also say professor if you're taking a class from them. Either one of those would be appropriate. If it's a graduate student, you can use their full name. That's fine. Usually if they have not graduated yet, you would not call them doctor. I have gotten emails from students that called me doctor, but I am not one yet. So I'm like, oh, nope, sorry, can't accept that title. But if it's a professor, then they are a doctor. Okay, and then yeah, last name is important. So this person who wrote this also missed some grammar things. So they wrote, do you still have available opposition, not position? So maybe it was autocorrect in their email or whatever happened there, but they obviously did not proofread their email. So be sure to proofread your email because I guarantee you it will be noticed. I recently wrote like a introductory email to a professor at the Smithsonian, and you can learn from my mistakes here. So I wanted to be super careful and I wanted to be respectful of their position and their time, wrote a long email. I misspelled their name and they emailed me back and commented on it. So be sure that you spell check, and that includes spelling the person's name correctly. In this case, it was 2 T's at the end instead of 1 T, but still it was important to them, obviously, because they commented on it. So grammar, spelling, make sure you check that auto spell correct if you have that on there on your email. And lastly, I already mentioned this, but there's no evidence in this email that this was personalized in any way. So this looks like it could be copied and pasted to 100 people. That is, I guarantee you that is not going to get as good of a response as if you took an extra little bit of time and really put in detail some information about why their research might be a good fit for you. This doesn't mean that you have to have extensive existing experience, right? Another question I get a lot in advising appointments from students is, I don't have enough experience and I don't feel qualified to apply. It's not true. Don't let that stop you. Everybody starts somewhere, and oftentimes when professors are taking on undergraduate assistants, sometimes it's actually better if you come in without training and then they get to train you in the way that they prefer. So for like for my field, for ecology, I do a lot of molecular work, and there are a lot of different ways to do DNA extractions and library prep and sequencing. So if you have already developed bad habits, then it's actually going to take me longer to retrain you than it would be for me to train somebody who doesn't have those skill sets. I can train you to do all those things. If you come in with a good attitude, you show up on time, you show me that you're really excited about the research, those things are more important, honestly, than if you've ever done DNA extraction before. Of course, if you have experience, it's also helpful to mention that because it shows that you understand what the work will be like, you have a background in the conceptual, whatever it is. But I'm just saying, don't be intimidated, just write the email. All right, let's take a look at it here. And I hate to be, too picky because you got to start somewhere. So maybe you start with this email and that's a good start, but let's take a look here. So again, that very first sentence, that introduction, who are you emailing? Hello, that's very anonymous. So try and add at least some form of introduction. Mr. and Miss and Mrs. can be a little tricky because you may not know what their preference is for people who are not faculty, but for faculty, doctor or professor is always good. If not, I would suggest just their full name, and that doesn't imply that you're assuming that they're married if they're a woman, or whatever. Okay, let's keep going here. Oops. Again, so not a lot of detail, right? So it's pretty anonymous. Hi, hello, I'm a student in the plant pathology department. They're working on Sclerotium ralphisi, sorry if I mispronounce it, not my organism, in peanut. I'm supposed to graduate on next fall and looking for the PhD opportunity. I'm interested in working with you. If you have any opening, I would be glad to proceed further. So they could have taken a little bit of time to think about grammar and sentence structure, but mostly what's most important here is that it's missing all those details. Okay, so let's look at a good example. Dear Professor, whatever their last name, tell them who you are. This part's really important. They're getting a cold email from you, right? So, and actually, let's back up for a second. Even outside of the content of the email, let's talk about the subject line. I forgot to say that earlier. So the subject line of your email is the first thing that they'll see when they open their inbox. So you want to give them some idea of why you're emailing them. So if it's a specific position that you're applying for, let's say they have advertised a research assistant position in their lab. I would say put that title, copy and paste into the subject of the email. Whatever terminology they're using in the description of the position is a weapon you can use to get their attention, right? So they know exactly what you're applying for. Copy and paste research assistant position, or if it's slightly different, go from there. I'm using examples from my field, which is STEM, but obviously this applies to all different majors and departments. So just fill in the blank for your own personal research interest here. So when you have the subject line of your email, I would say, inquiry for research assistant position or applying for research assistant position. Another important comment before you even get to the structure of the email is make sure that you've read any instructions that they have available for how they want you to contact them to apply for a position. So if you're just randomly looking for faculty and you find their email and you want to contact them, great, go straight to this step, go straight to the good email. But if it's a position that's already advertised on their website, then make sure to read in there, because sometimes it'll say at the bottom, contact my lab manager with this subject of the email, or it'll say, send your resume to this email address. So you want to avoid having their first response be, you didn't follow the directions. So check it out. Sometimes it's not there, sometimes it's open-ended. If you're just asking if they have a position and it's not related to a specific advertised position, then just ignore that part. But again, just take 5 minutes, make sure that you're doing it the way they asked. They will appreciate it. It'll save them 5 minutes of emailing you. All right, so here we go. Back to the content of a good email. We're using their professional title, professor. Give them information as to who you are. So I'm a freshman and my major is evolution and ecology. What are you interested in? Well, I'm interested in field work in tropical rainforests. And I've never been to a tropical rainforest, but they're super cool and I would like to gain experience and hopefully go do field work there. Super cool may not be the best wording, but you get the idea. Show enthusiasm. So I'm very interested. I'm excited. I'm passionate about this. Why are you interested in this specific person, faculty mentor, or in their research? So this is probably the most important part of the whole email. You want to tell them why it matters that you're contacting them specifically. If you are just copying and pasting that email again to 100 different people, you're not going to have this part in there. But if you're saying, I've always been fascinated by this organism or this this dance style or this fashion subgenre, and it's been my dream to be involved in this for a long time, and I found your website and I read about your research and this is the perfect fit for my interests. That will really seal the deal right there. It's perfect for me. What you do is perfect for me. It's always good to indicate your availability if you can do that. I know sometimes you may not know what your course load will be next quarter, or it's hard to think that far ahead when you're an undergrad because your classes come first, of course. But if you can tell them at least for the rest of the quarter what your schedule is, that can be really helpful for when they read this, because assuming that they have an opening and assuming that they are able to take you on as a research assistant in their group, then they want to know when you're available, and you're saving them an extra email by just giving that information to them up front. You don't have to be super specific. You could say, I'm looking for a position that could be between 5 to 10 hours a week. I'm available Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning. Or you could say, I could work up to 10 hours a week, and I'm flexible in the evenings. Or sometimes there are also evening and weekend opportunities. So it could be a position where you can work around your schedule a little bit easier. If it's really important for you to receive unit credit versus any other currency, I guess I could say, then you may want to mention that. Is it possible for me to receive unit credit for this position? If it's an advertised position that they already have up, most likely they'll mention something about that. Some labs will, or some groups will start you off as a volunteer, and then you can transition into other positions. So in my PI's lab, he likes to start undergraduates off as volunteers because it lets him get a sense of whether they're a good fit for the lab. They get a sense of whether they like to work there or not. And then once they've been there for a quarter or two, then they work out a new deal, which is, okay, you can get this many units of credit for this many hours in the lab. And there are university requirements for how many hours will equal how many units. So you can look up that as well, or we can put that in the chat later. If it's not important to you, if the most important thing is getting that letter of recommendation from that faculty, you don't have to include that. You could also talk about that after you get the position too. You don't necessarily have to put that information in the first email, but it's good to keep in mind that that is an option and you should think about that. Maybe when you get the interview with them, that's something to bring up and say, I'm really interested in research experience, of course, but I am a transfer student. I don't need extra units. I'm not interested in unit credit. Is there a way I can become a paid student assistant? Some labs have budgets for that. Unfortunately, not everybody does. But your time is valuable and you should get something out of your time. So why you? So if you have a background or skills in that particular type of research, write it down. You don't have to go into a long novel about your entire history, but a sentence or two about your experience will really help them get a sense of who you are and how much you already know about the topic. You could even say, I took your class last quarter. I learned a lot. I got, if you get an A in the class, maybe bring that up, or just say I did well in the class. And then thank them at the end. So a lot of times faculty get a ton of emails. And so it's always polite just to say, I know you're busy and you have a lot of demands on your time. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Something that is a formal closing of the email. And then any sort of sign off. So sincerely, best regards. The British way is to say cheers at the end, which my advisor does because he's British. So cheers, your full name, and then some contact info below that. So if you have a website, or if you post a lot of scholastic things on your social media, you may opt to include that underneath and they can get a sense of who you are. Don't include your Instagram if it's all just selfies. Like, I mean, maybe that if you're in a different, if you're in humanities, maybe that actually is something I shouldn't say because that excludes humanities. But if you have some of your art or something on a website or social media, definitely include that. But if it's not professional, then I would opt not to include it. Okay, let's see here. Here's another example. This one's kind of long, so let's take a minute here and just read through it. I think this is a really good example because they hit all of the points in that kind of guideline that we just looked at together. They use the professional title. They introduce who they are, what their major is, what their year is. They're very motivated to join the lab. How do they know this faculty person? Well, they took their class last quarter, Biz 102, and they really enjoyed it. And they learned a lot about even beyond the scope of the class, about some specific topics. Now, these are keywords that they probably got from that faculty person's website or from reading papers about this faculty person. So this faculty person or their research group obviously does stuff with Zika, medications, and other important topics, and insect repellent. So then they go in a little deeper and they say, they read the research article published by one of your students, and they didn't know something. They learned something from reading that paper. So it was a very useful comparison. Feel free in this section of the email to ask questions. So if you read a paper and you had a question come up about something, that could be the lead in to a longer conversation with that faculty person. Or you could bring that up in an interview, or if you get a chance to talk to them one-on-one, that could also lead into some more in-depth conversation. If you have any room in your lab, I'm very interested to become part of your research team, your undergraduate research team. I have basic laboratory experience and I'm willing to learn any lab techniques and protocols. So it sounds like they don't have a lot of experience in that particular type of research, but they're trying to show that they know the basics, they're motivated to learn, and they're very interested, obviously, in the topic because of the first paragraph. I'm attaching a copy of my resume to this email for your convenience. Always a good idea. So if you don't already have a resume, I recommend you start one. It doesn't have to have a lot on it. You don't have to have a ton of research experience, but just any volunteer work, even if it was like, one weekend in high school, you went and helped take care of homeless pets with a shelter clinic or whatever it was, you can still put that down as experience. And a lot of those types of experiences, you're going to learn transferable skills from those. So even if it's not directly related to the type of position you want now, you can still make the language of your resume or your CV emphasize the transferable skills rather than what the actual experience was. So in that example, if I worked at a shelter for homeless pets when I was in high school, let's say I volunteered there. So yes, it's very veterinary based, and maybe the lab I want to apply to is not anything to do with dogs or cats or veterinary medicine, whatever it is. But I could still say I worked with a team. I had to have good communication skills. I interacted with a lot of different types of clients. I communicated with the doctors, and I was responsible for the health and well-being of all these animals. So all those are more transferable than just that one type of experience. So the way you word your experiences on your resume can have a big impact in the response you get. Alrighty. So then sincerely, student name, student email, and then it cut off a little bit, sorry about that, but it basically just says any other pertinent info. So if you, like I said, if you have a website or if you have social media, then that could be useful for that lab or that faculty person. Okay, here's one more. I promise this is the last one. Actually, I don't. I forget if there's another one. I think it's the last one. Anyway, here is a real world example, I believe. So this student, again, they took a class with this professor, and they looked at her research website, and they looked at specific projects that the lab is currently undertaking. So that one's an even more of a bonus point than just looking at the website, because sometimes when you read about someone's research or their design work or their artistic work, you may be looking at material that is much older than what they're working on now. So often if they have a website, they'll feature current or relevant work. So they may not list their entire publication record, but they may list relevant papers that relate to current projects in the lab. So you may want to see, okay, well, they used to work with Zika virus, but now they work with this other virus. So I shouldn't gear my email like, I'm really excited about working with Zika, because then the response is going to be, oh, that's great. Sorry, we don't do that anymore, right? So it's always good to just know what they're currently working on. Anyway, scanning down here, this person has a very specific interest and background. So they were a survivor of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that gives them a really personal reason for wanting to pursue this career aspiration. And even though it's a chemistry lab that they are applying for, they're mentioning this and kind of linking their personal career goal, their personal experiences and their career goals with how those apply to this lab. So I think that was really nicely done. And they talk about how if they get this position, it's going to help them in their career, and it will also help the lab. So those are two different things that professors often like to know. They want to help you. They want whatever work you're doing to further your academic and career goals. They also want you to help them. So they want you to be able to further the work being done in that group. Another great part of this email is that they ask about having a meeting. So obviously, because we're in different times this year, 2020 is a little different, you can't really request, and I would not recommend requesting an in-person meeting, but you could say a Zoom or a phone call or whatever the professor would be comfortable with. Some professors are less technologically skilled than others. So keep that in mind. If you want, if you say, I'll WhatsApp you, they may not know what that is. So you may want to opt to just give them an open-ended question. I would love to meet with you or have an email conversation, whatever platform you prefer. Most professors at UC Davis are pretty comfortable with Zoom by now, but not everybody. I have two PIs, and my other PI still uses those clear, transparent overhead slides. Does anyone even know what I'm talking about? That's like, yeah, from the 80s. So she's wonderful. She's an amazing, smart person, but she just doesn't like technology. And so she knows that method works. She's got it all set up. Why should she change? She's not a Zoom caller. Whenever I want to talk to her, I have to call her on her phone. She just got a cell phone last year. So I had to call her on her landline until last year. She does not text. Anyway, so just bear in mind that you may have a range of technological skill. Okay, so we're kind of at the end here, and I just want to briefly plug some amazing programs that are available to you at UC Davis that the URC helps promote. And Lolita, would you be willing to just say a couple words about these programs?
Sure, sure. So the programs listed here, I'll start with the McNair Scholars Program. That is in essence a program that you have to devote at least a year and an extra quarter to it. The UC Leads program is a 2-year research scholars program. So you do have to have time to commit. And then we also have the CAMP program and the MERPS program. All of these programs aim to diversify the work field. Most of them are STEM based. However, the McNair Scholars Program is about 25% non-STEM students as well. I did put a link in the chat to a matrix, and you can look to see if you're qualified for these programs. You can go directly to the website to find out when the applications are due. For CAMP and MERPS, those are two programs that I am responsible for. And the application is coming due pretty quickly, October 19th, which is on a Monday. And the NSF program is the CAMP program, and that is specifically for underrepresented students in STEM. And the aim for all of these programs is to encourage a transition to graduate study. So definitely, if you're interested, take a look at that. All of the programs offer stipends to the scholars in the program. So once you're involved in research and you're participating and you're accepted into the program, you can receive a quarterly stipend for participation. It does vary what the amount is depending on the program. So take a look at that. For CAMP and MERPS, it is the same. It's $800 per quarter. And we also have a summer program where students can receive up to $3,200 for participating during the summer. Now that looks a little different because of, we're all sheltering in place right now. But pretty much the programming is the same. It's virtual, it is online. Just most of the students are not conducting research in a lab right now. So I did want to put a plug in about that right now. Again, we are recruiting for CAMP and MERPS through October. There is a priority deadline of October 19th, and then the final deadline is October 26th. And we did get questions as to why the two deadlines. Priority deadline obviously will be considered first, especially if you have a research scholar position. We only have so many spots available, so we encourage you to apply early if you are interested. You can also contact me personally at the Undergraduate Research Center, urc.ucdavis.edu or at ucdavis.edu if you have any questions. I'll also drop my email in the chat too, so you can always follow up with questions that you might have regarding CAMP and MERPS programs.
Great, thanks Lolita, that's super helpful. And I'm just now scrolling through some of your questions in the chat. So I see a couple of questions coming up frequently, and I know that a lot of students right now are concerned because we are doing things from a distance right now, social distancing. Students are worried that there aren't any research opportunities. I know that this is going to depend on each lab individually and each department individually, but personally for the lab I work in, we work with endangered species, and so we have to have business as usual. So we obviously are taking extra precautions to keep everyone safe, but we have a ton of work that needs to be done, and we'll probably have more work in the spring. So depending on what your field is, the need for help may fluctuate throughout the year. For example, with our work, we need a lot of help in the spring and the fall. But that may change depending on your topic, of course. So yes, there is still research being conducted on campus. It is possible for you to get research opportunities. Not all research needs to be done on campus in person. So I have an undergraduate student who's helping me with a project, and she's doing a lot of data analysis. So we meet on Zoom, and I help her with data analysis. I send her files, and she's able to do most of her work remotely, which is super helpful for me, and it keeps everybody safe. So it's always worth reaching out and asking. Of course, it's going to depend, and yes, maybe a lot of different types of research are being negatively affected. But it is still possible. And I'm also seeing several questions about being third year or later in your undergrad career. And is it still okay to list experiences from earlier on? So maybe from high school. Definitely. Yeah. And like I said earlier, I think the way that you phrase those experiences can matter. So if you have a volunteer experience, definitely put it down, but maybe go into a little bit of detail about how that has helped you in your current situation, or how those skills can be applied towards whatever it is you're hoping to do. So the way that you sell it sell it can matter. So think about how to word it so that it's more about transferable skills, more about the experience that you're gaining now or where you're at now than it is about whatever the actual experience was in high school or earlier on. And then you definitely have time as transfer students. I was a transfer student as an undergrad. I had lots of opportunities to do research. Yes, you have less time than some other students, but it's possible. And you want to be careful to balance your time. So everything is extra stressful for a lot of people right now, and it's good to keep your mental health as a priority. So don't pile on too much stuff. However, you're in a position, you're at UC Davis, which is a great school. So if you want to take the time and you feel like you have the mental space to take on a few hours a week of something, it can actually be stress relieving. Like if you're really enjoying the work you're doing and you're working with good people, it can actually be great and actually be a great break from your coursework. So keep that in mind too. It might be something that is actually helping you mentally, not adding stress to you, hopefully. In an ideal scenario, that's what it would be. And then let's see here. I'm just scrolling through, but if people have other questions that are popping up, feel free to type them in the chat, or you can also raise your hand and then I can unmute you if you want to ask it directly. That's fine too. Okay, so I see a new one here. If a PI doesn't advertise and only has some summaries, how likely? It really depends. So my PI that I mentioned, who's not very technologically savvy, she has a lot of undergraduates who work in her lab, and she just doesn't update her website. So the faculty or the department fills in some basic information about what she does for her, and she doesn't have to do that herself, but she hasn't really gone the extra step to set up her own website or add additional information. So it could be that that person is just not as technologically savvy, or they're just so busy doing their research they don't have time to maintain their website. That's also a possibility. It's really nice when you see a faculty person who highlights that they support undergraduates on their website. Excuse me. So if you see that, it's a bonus because it shows that they really value and support undergraduates. But but that's not always the case. See, I knew I was going to lose my voice. It's at the very end though, so it's okay. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, so if you're doesn't have a website, the Mind Institute is awesome. So if you're interested in psychology or anything related to biopsych, the Mind Institute has a website where you can go through and search by lab. And I've found when I've helped students in advising appointments that when you really dig into the Mind Institute's website, you can find a ton of different resources that are specific to your interest. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I'm sure it's probably still up and running. I don't know about their policies because they're at the Med Center. I don't know how that affects their ability to take on new students because they're right next to the Med Center there in Sacramento. So they may have more restrictions than the Davis campus, but it's always worth asking about. Or again, there may be something you can do remotely to help them. So you never know. You could definitely get involved still. Other questions that people have? We've got a few more minutes, I think. I didn't think I was going to talk the whole hour, but I guess I rambled on. Sorry. Yeah. What would be a good subject title? So if you, to your email, so if you are applying for a position that has a specific title, make sure to use that in the email title. So I use the example of research assistant position, but that could be anything. That could be, you know, a graphic design student assistant, or it could be you know, music composition assistant, whatever your interest is. So If they don't have a specific position title, it can be a little more open-ended. I would definitely include something about research and maybe opportunity. So inquiry about research opportunities. It's a little long. Somebody commented earlier about how the feedback they got from a grad student was to not make your emails too long because it's a little overwhelming for faculty and grad students to read that. Don't write a novel. You don't need to make it more than one nice paragraph. However, you can hit all those key points that I showed in those slides without hopefully getting too wordy. But it is important to add some of that detail. Yes, the session is being recorded and we will post it to our website. So you'll have access to that. And I think that the slides are also getting posted. I'm not sure about that, but I think they might be getting posted as well. Flatter the scientist. Okay, so that's funny. So in the example email, I actually reworded one of the sentences because I thought it flattered the faculty person too much. And I think there's a fine balance. So you want to show that you are respectful of their experience, you're interested in what they do, you maybe admire what they do. However, you don't have to go overboard, you know, be honest. You don't need to exaggerate too much. But if they are an amazing researcher and you're a super fan, you could say that and they will definitely be flattered, but don't say it if you don't mean it. If you're going to flatter.
Sarah, I just to interject, one of the things you can also do, and I recommend this to a lot of my students, is do your research on them first. So while you're looking up their information, find out about what type of research they do. So every faculty member has a page that lists all of the research, their journals, their articles, all of their publications, right? So take the time to read some of those articles and publications. That's a good way to sort of interject and also compliment at the same time without stating that you're complimenting them. You know, it's not as obvious. So you can say, I read your article on this and I had a question, or I read your article on this and I thought it was really great. I would love the opportunity to chat with you about it further. So what that does is it conveys to them that you're very proactive, first of all, that you went the extra mile. And I think that if it were me, I would be flattered that someone actually took the time out to read my work. And I probably want to meet them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely, if you can show that you took, like you said, Lolita, that you went the extra mile, that you took the time to go in depth and read about what they do, that is flattering. I mean, I would be flattered if anyone bothered to read any of my papers, because you know that they put so much work into that, and it's a lot of work to produce a publication. So. And I'm going to put my email in the chat as well so that people have it in case, you know, more questions come up. But you can also email the URC, and we're going to have a ton more of these Discovery Cafe style talks that are focused on specific topics throughout the quarter. So keep an eye on our website. And let me see here. Did I put? Oh, just a quick plug. The Undergraduate Research Conference is awesome. We have in the past done in-person conferences, and these numbers on this slide are from the in-person conference. But we also had a great turnout this last spring for our virtual conference, our first ever virtual conference. The feedback we got from students was that it was very interactive. They had a great experience. They got good feedback from their presentations on their research. So once you do get into a research position, keep in mind that there are also presentation opportunities for you, and putting down on your resume or your CV that you presented at a professional conference can be a really great addition there. And just a last little reminder here, don't get too disappointed if your first attempt is not successful. So there are a lot of times when faculty just can't take students. It's not because they didn't want you, it's just because they didn't have a position available or they don't have any projects for you to work on. So don't get frustrated, try again. You can always ask for feedback from them. If you do get a rejection, say, you know, I'd like to know how I can improve my application. If it was an application or whatever it was, interview, an email, getting that feedback is sometimes difficult, but it's really helpful. So don't take it personally and just keep trying, because it's easy to get discouraged and get stuck on that kind of thing. But statistically, the more you try, the more likely you are to get something that's a great fit. And yeah, so this is part of doing things that are maybe a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And I know it's scary to maybe write that email and contact that faculty person, but you're not going to lose anything by trying, really. I mean, if they say no, they say no. And you move on and you find another amazing lab to work in or amazing research opportunity. So don't be too frustrated if it doesn't work out, and just keep trying. So I know this year is weird and everybody's a little bit out of sorts. So you've already done more than the minimum by showing up to this event. So you're doing great, and just keep trying and then learn from all those different opportunities that come your way, and just say yes to different opportunities. Yeah.
Great. So one of the things that I do want to add is contacting the faculty. So make sure that you don't just email one particular faculty that you want to work with. It's okay to email 3, 4, 5, but just make sure it's someone that you could see yourself working with. So this is why it's a good idea to research what type of research they're working on as well. Make sure the information is current, because maybe they used to work on a particular subject 10 years ago, but now they're doing something new. So you want to make sure that that information is accurate. Also, if you do not get a response back, wait a week or 2 and email them again. Definitely follow up. It's really important that you do that. I say that because, again, the crazy time that we're in, sometimes faculty miss the email. It may go to their spam. They just may be overwhelmed, and sometimes having that reminder is a really good thing for them. And also, I've heard faculty say, and I've mentioned this before, that they on purpose may not respond to that first email. They want to see how much, how persistent you are. Right, so that's part of it too. If you show that you're definitely interested, you're going to email them back. So just keep that in mind. It's good to be persistent, especially if you really want something. You should go after it. So.
Thank you, Lolita. I meant to say that, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah, definitely send a follow-up email. What do you say in the follow-up email? You can politely remind them, say, hello, I emailed you 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to make sure that my email didn't accidentally end up in your spam. I'm still very interested in this opportunity. Please let me know if you didn't get that email and I'll resend it. Something like that. So you don't want to assume that they intentionally ignored you. So you always want to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, but definitely good to be persistent. And like Lolita said, they could even just being a little bit elusive to see how persistent you are. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Oops, I guess that's the last slide. So if you are on social media, check us out. And it's funny because I made a special slide for social media and then I forgot to put it in this presentation. But we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you search for UC Davis Undergraduate Research Center, you will find us. I believe that we are UCD_URC on Instagram and UCD_URC with no underscore on Twitter. And then URC Undergraduate. Whoa, I can't spell. Okay. Anyway, yeah, you'll find us by either of these. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, this will be recorded and up on the website, so you can always reference it there, and check out our other amazing events for Research Week. We have so many events coming up. It's awesome. And good luck this quarter. Keep trying and keep looking for those research opportunities, because you're going to find them if you keep trying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording.